Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast. The podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman, and because I get so many questions about alcohol and sugar, today's episode is going to clarify the relationship between alcohol, sugar, and cravings. But just before we raise a glass, I'd like to say that if this is your first time here, then welcome and thank you for listening to this podcast. And whether you're new or a regular and you haven't yet rated or reviewed this podcast, could I ask you to scroll down and tap on the stars to rate this podcast and also to write a short review to let me know how this podcast is helping you in your life after sugar. I love reading your reviews, and when you rate and review this podcast, not only does it encourage me to continue making new episodes, but it also helps to share this podcast and have more people see it so that we can help more people feel better and lose weight with less sugar. So again, thank you for rating and reviewing this podcast and for spreading the word about sugar. All right, so let's talk about sugar and alcohol. If you drink alcohol, you may like to know which alcoholic drinks are lowest in sugar. In fact, I see this a lot in keto groups where people look for the absolute lowest content of sugar in alcohol. And that usually means spirits such as gin, rum, tequila, vodka, and whiskey, which have 0 grams of sugar. And there's also some very dry wines that only have 2 or 3 grams of residual sugar per bottle. And by the way, residual sugar comes from the natural grape sugars left in a wine after the alcoholic fermentation is finished. The more residual sugar remaining in a wine, the sweeter the wine is. And the less residual sugar, the drier the wine. In fact, even medium dry wines only have about 3 to 9 grams of residual sugar per bottle. And if you're only looking for the sugar content, then I suppose you could always compare with, let's say, orange juice, which has 22 grams of sugar per 8 ounces, or Coca-Cola, which has 26 grams of sugar per 8 ounces, or even tonic water, which has 22 grams of sugar per 8 ounces. So if all you're concentrating on is the sugar content, you could argue that you're better off drinking the vodka rather than the mixer. And I hate to be a killjoy or a party pooper, but here's my take on focusing only on the sugar content of alcohol. And as a disclaimer, I want to say that I am not a doctor and I do not give any type of medical information or recommendations here, and I'm certainly not judging anyone who does want to drink alcohol. In fact, I can handle a small glass of wine from time to time, or a sugar-free mojito, or some really dry cider. So who am I to judge? But here's the thing. If you find that alcoholic drinks, whatever their sugar level, trigger cravings in you, whether it's for more alcohol or for sugary or salty and crunchy snacks, then that's something to look out for. And as I said right at the beginning, alcoholic drinks that don't contain any sugar happen to be the highest in alcohol content, like those spirits that contain 40% alcohol. So even if you're not ingesting any sugar, you are ingesting a lot of alcohol. And if you have diabetes, then drinking alcohol can be even riskier because the disinhibiting effect of alcohol can mean that you're less likely to notice the warning signs of low blood sugar. Now, again, I'm not here to tell you whether or not you're allowed to drink alcohol any more than I'm here to tell you if you're allowed to eat sugar. I'm not here to give or to take away permission, but I do think that it's a good idea for you to be educated enough to decide for yourself whether or not you want to drink alcohol, and if so, how much, and what type, and when, and especially why. And I'll get into the why right after this short break. I want to take a quick break to say that if you're looking for some free resources about how to cut sugar, then I have plenty for you. Come check out the Life After Sugar Facebook page and subscribe to the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, as well as my Instagram account at My Life After Sugar. You can also check out my TikTok account at Netta_Life After Sugar. And if cravings are getting in the way and causing you to fall off the wagon, then I have 5 tips for you, especially if you're an intermittent faster, to help you get rid of cravings. Go to aftersugarclub.com and download your 5 tips today. Alright, so a lot of people ask me if it's okay to drink alcohol and still be considered sugar-free. And the short answer is yes, even if technically a lot of alcoholic drinks like wines and beers do contain some residual sugar, and alcoholic drinks that don't contain any sugar are usually much, much higher in their alcohol content. But again, I'm not here to moralize or to say if you're allowed or not allowed to drink alcohol, but I think it's interesting for you to ask yourself some deeper questions about when and why you choose to consume alcohol and sugar. In what types of situations? In response to what kind of emotions? And whatever comes up for you is 100% valid. This is a judgment-free zone. So here are a couple of questions to ask yourself. Do you have a similar relationship with alcohol as you do or did with sugar? In other words, do you use alcohol in a similar way that you use sugar as some kind of coping mechanism or a way to numb your emotions when you're feeling stressed or angry or exhausted or even in a good mood when you want to celebrate? Again, there's nothing wrong with turning to sugar or alcohol to cope with your emotions. Most of us have been there for sure. But when you feel that it's problematic and giving you more negative side effects than the original situation or emotion, well, then it may be a good idea to look under the hood of what's making you turn to sugar or alcohol. And that's not always easy to do on your own, which is why I'm here to help you look deeper instead of just staying on the surface. And actually, a lot of people come to me for help when they've already given up alcohol and find themselves craving sugar. And in fact, part of the cravings that a lot of people who don't drink alcohol anymore face are actually sugar cravings, not alcohol cravings. And it's because the brain and the body are craving a sugar fix. In fact, a lot of rehabilitation centers often offer high sugar foods during detox. Why is that? Well, if you're used to drinking alcohol or eating sugar to get a high or a dopamine rush, then you're probably used to associating your sugar intake or your alcohol intake with feelings of pleasure. And if one source of pleasure goes, then you're naturally going to look for other sources of pleasure to replace it. Biologically, alcohol is metabolized by the liver, and if the liver is busy dealing with alcohol, then it will delay dealing with other nutrients, and basically your body will use the byproducts of alcohol metabolism as its preferred fuel. And studies have found that alcohol not only increases oxidative stress during metabolism, but also inhibits the liver from making glucose through gluconeogenesis. And if carbohydrate-rich food is taken together with alcohol, then this can exaggerate insulin secretion and can actually cause reactive hypoglycemia after eating these types of foods. And by carbohydrate-rich foods, it's understood that it's very probably processed, sugary and starchy foods, which means that if you have body fat that you're trying to get rid of, your body's likely to deal with the alcohol before it will deal with burning the stored body fat. And one other surprising link between alcohol and sugar is that a condition called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or NAFLD, is where excess fat builds up in your liver. And this buildup of fat isn't caused by heavy alcohol use, because when someone drinks a lot of alcohol, this can cause fat to build up in the liver, but the condition that's linked to heavy alcohol consumption is called alcohol-associated liver disease. Whereas NAFLD, commonly called a fatty liver, is actually an umbrella term for a range of liver conditions that affect people who drink little to no alcohol. And actually, one of the things that lead to too much fat that's stored in the liver cells is an excess of fructose. And I'm not talking about an excess of fruit, but the excessive consumption of fructose in free sugars. And free sugars means white table sugar, brown sugar, high fructose corn syrup, and all the 101 different terms for sugar, and the highly processed food products that are made by the processed foods industry and that contain sugar. Because sucrose, commonly known as sugar, is made up of one molecule of glucose and one molecule of fructose. And free sugars are sugars that have little to no nutritional value and little to no fiber, slowing down the absorption of the sugar. For example, fruit juice is a free sugar, but whole fruit isn't a free sugar. More and more studies are indicating that fructose is involved in the development of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD, because the liver is the only organ that can metabolize fructose. And when the liver gets overloaded with an influx of fructose from these free sugars, in other words, processed and refined sugars, well, it ends up storing the excess as fat, hence a fatty liver. But alcohol doesn't just affect the liver. Alcohol has a powerful effect on dopamine activity in the brain. When we drink, the brain's so-called reward circuits are flooded with dopamine. This produces euphoric feelings, or what we recognize as feeling buzzed. Dopamine also activates memory circuits in other parts of the brain that remember this pleasant experience and leave you thirsting for more. But over time, alcohol can cause dopamine levels to plummet, leaving you feeling miserable and desiring more alcohol to feel better, just like sugar. While drinking initially boosts a person's dopamine levels, the brain adapts to the dopamine overload with continued alcohol use. It starts to produce less of the chemical, reduce the number of dopamine receptors in the body, and increase dopamine transporters, which ferry away the excess dopamine in the spaces between brain cells. As dopamine levels plummet, so does your mood. As a result, People with an alcohol addiction may consume even more alcohol in an unconscious effort to boost their dopamine levels and get that spark back. And I quote, "Intoxication occurs when alcohol intake exceeds your body's ability to metabolize alcohol and break it down." And research is now shedding more light on the role dopamine plays in alcohol addiction. Now, I'm not saying here that you shouldn't enjoy life. Quite the opposite. The After Sugar Club is all about joyful, sugar-free living. And you can choose whether or not you drink alcohol or consume sugar to have fun in your life. So if you're ready and committed to make the decisions that are right for you, but you feel that you need some guidance and support and accountability, and a guide and a community that gets you, then there are two ways that we can work together. First, in the After Sugar Club, which is designed to give you support and accountability through our live check-in calls at a more affordable price. The After Sugar Club is always open for you. Check out the After Sugar Club private membership when you go to aftersugarclub.com, click on After Sugar Club in the top menu. And for more step-by-step guidance and customized support to help you get rid of cravings so that you can slim down and finally feel in control around food, there's my 90-day program, Freedom from Cravings Formula. To get more info about the program, go to aftersugarclub.com and click on the big green button to schedule a clarity call with me so that we can talk together to see if the Freedom from Cravings Formula program is a good fit for you. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.